Better shut the door so that the noise doesn't get out in the other room where people are trying to watch TV.
We were just talking about you, Howard.
Oh, I'm so sorry. How you guys been doing?
We're all ready for our Astronomical League tonight.
We sure are.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Yes, it will.
We are good.
Saw a real neat contrail this morning. The SpaceX launched,
Cool.
and Barb Harris got some great pictures she posted on Instagram.
Oh, that's
a beautiful
great.
launch. We didn't get out until afterwards, and see, this is oops, let's see, got to do it this way. This is the picture of the contrail that we saw. It's just amazing
wow,
how
it's
they
beautiful.
corkscrew into such a strange shape. But it was incredibly beautiful.
I saw Barb's pictures on Facebook too. Well, no, she texted them to me actually from her front yard. That's just amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
Yes.
Part of the excitement.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were lucky to get to see that because we've had a lot of rainy weather and then we got about 3 good days and now it's clouded up again tonight. So I don't know what tomorrow holds.
Yeah. I had 3 inches of snow last week.
Oh my goodness.
We broke the record and we had snow flurries yesterday. Today's the first day we haven't had snow or flurries in the last couple of days. It's been, it's been winter again here.
Well, I'll take the 4 inches of rain we had over the last week.
Yeah.
Over the snow.
We haven't had 4 inches of rain this year yet.
Oh my goodness.
It's just weird to see snow under blooming dogwoods.
It is.
Yeah.
Something's just not right about that.
Everybody's got sheets over everything around here. All their trees, all the bushes.
Oh my.
Yeah. Then it's supposed to be 80 one day next week. We're all going to be sick.
Oh boy. You know, I lived in Nebraska, and when the last winter I was in Nebraska, February 28 got up to 80 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
And March 1, the high for the day was 28.
Yeah,
Oh.
it sounds like Arkansas.
Wow.
Yeah. We got days
Scotty's
like that
part of
too.
it. Wendy, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Wendy.
Oh,
Hi, Wendy.
Now I can hear you all, so be careful what you say.
Oh,
That's
gotta
right.
really be careful.
We were going to say some stuff, but now.
Yeah, there was a great Dilbert cartoon this morning about, he says, I hate these Zoom meetings. I have to deal with all these morons. And so your mic is on.
always assume it's hot.
Yeah, that's right. In whether you're broadcasting or not.
Scott, you don't know this story, but I was in Jonesboro 2 years ago and visiting a friend and some friends, and it was, to say it was hot would be putting it mildly. Just walking across the yard, I saw some gentleman walking down the sidewalk with a dog, and I just casually said, "Wow, it's pretty hot, huh?" And he said, "You're not from around here, are you?"
Yeah, that's right.
Apparently
As we say in David Levy's area, it's dry heat, but it's still hot, isn't it?
right.
So-
Well, this was a wet heat.
Hey, what is it? An
Carroll?
oven is an oven.
Carroll,
I have a vision of the front of the gates to my eternal reward saying, but at least it's a dry heat.
Carroll,
Yes.
Meet Connell Richards. This is Carroll Orch, who's the president of the league.
Hi, Conal.
Hi, how are you?
Very nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you.
Looks like you got a very pertinent topic you're talking about tonight.
That's true. I'm one of only a couple people I know who's been focusing on teen astronomy. I'm looking forward to talking about it and sharing some of my work.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
The Northern Cross Northern Science Foundation, Northern Cross Science Foundation, and the Northern Central region of the Astronomical League are here.
The Hubble Space
Oh, that's pretty.
for its 31st birthday has captured a glimpse of an incredible star, one of the brightest stars in our galaxy. This giant luminous blue variable star, known as AG Carinae, is huge, 70 times more massive than our sun and shining with the brilliance of 1,000,000 suns. The star is surrounded by a glowing halo of gas and dust. This vast structure was created from giant eruptions from the star about 10,000 years ago, creating an expanding shell that is now nearly 5 light years across, similar to the distance from our sun to its nearest neighbor star. The outbursts expelled the star's outer layers, blowing out material nearly 10 times the mass of our sun. The nebula around the star from these ancient eruptions is being impacted by a powerful wind of charged particles flowing out from the star at 1,000,000 kilometers per hour, 10 times faster than the nebula itself is expanding. As this outflowing gas slams into the slower moving outer nebula, it creates a snowplow effect, clearing a cavity around the star and sculpting structures in the nebula. Searing radiation from the star is lighting up the nebula, as seen by Hubble in both visible light and in the ultraviolet light that can only be seen from space. Red colors indicate glowing hydrogen gas laced with nitrogen gas. At the upper left in the image, the diffuse red glow shows a region where the stellar wind has broken through a tenuous region of material and swept it into space. Blue features, shaped like tadpoles and bubbles, are dust clumps shaped by the stellar wind and illuminated by the star's reflected light. This incredible image from the Hubble Space Telescope shows how even one star can be incredibly beautiful and powerful as it impacts its surrounding environment. Since Hubble orbits above the Earth's atmosphere, it can give us a clear, detailed view of this kind of awe-inspiring beauty and activity in the universe. For the past 31 years, the Hubble Space Telescope has changed the way we think of space and our place in the cosmos. Hubble has revealed an incredible diversity of stars and gives us pristine views into beautiful interstellar nebulas where new stars and their surrounding disks of dust and planets continue to form. Looking even deeper into space, Hubble makes it possible for us to see across billions of light years, revealing ancient adolescent galaxies that we can compare with our own Milky Way. Hubble is even refining our understanding of the age of the universe and its rate of expansion. It sees the telltale effects of mysterious black holes, dark matter, and dark energy over time. In the past year alone, Hubble revealed a large concentration of small black holes nestled within the heart of a globular cluster of stars. It rewound the clock to calculate the age and site of a supernova blast. It also detected a possible new second atmosphere formed on a distant exoplanet. And closer to home, Hubble spotted a comet lurking near Jupiter and its Trojan asteroids. These are just a handful of Hubble's recent discoveries. Hubble remains in excellent technical health and is expected to continue its exploration of the universe for years to come. From 1993 to 2009, there were 5 astronaut servicing missions for repairs and upgrades of the telescope. These, along with an ongoing crew of attentive experts on the ground, are keeping the telescope today at the peak of its scientific capabilities. You can find out more about the Hubble Space Telescope at the website nasa.gov/Hubble and on social media at NASA Hubble.
Well, hello everybody. This is Scott Roberts here from Explore Scientific, and it's my pleasure and my honor to introduce all of these great people here from the Astronomical League. Coordinating the Astronomical League 5 is Terry Mann. Terry arranges the speakers and make sure that everybody's on course to give the great information that you can only get from the Astronomical League. So I'm going to turn this over to Terry right away. And Terry, thanks for making this happen.
Well, thank you, Scott. It is such a pleasure to be here. It is so nice because, you know, we finally see all these people that a lot of times we didn't used to see until we were at a conference. You know, we always said so many people we see all the time are extended family. You know, this is the first few times that I've seen David Levy and Wendy. It's been forever. And, you know, if there's one good thing I can think of here that's came out of the pandemic a little bit, is we see, even though we don't see them face to face, we are able to see them personally. I haven't seen Howard. Oh my gosh, it's been quite a while at the Winter Star Party. You know, and so it kind of brings everybody together. So it is so good to see everybody, and thank you all for being here as speakers, and thank you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. So what I would like to do, as I just mentioned, David, would you please kick us off? And thank you for being here. It was very nice to see you again.
Well, thanks, Terry. It's really a pleasure to be here. My first personal experience with the Astronomical League was the annual conference in 1984. And the night before that conference began, some of you already know this, that David Eicher and I witnessed the blowing up of a freeway in Milwaukee. And that is a story. Someday you might want to ask David to tell it. But if I were, I'd like to introduce you to someone who is no longer living right now, but he was a pretty advanced amateur astronomer back in the 19th century. He had his own telescope with which he observed, I think he observed Donati's comet with it. And I know he looked with his friends when he was out shopping at the Great Comet of 1861. And that's written up in his memoirs. But he, even though he was an amateur astronomer and he loved looking through telescopes, his real goal was to be a poet. And when he first came out with poems, chiefly lyrical in the 1830s, they were reviewed by people who think they know about poetry. And they just knocked it to pieces. And it got him so depressed that he thought he was going to withdraw from being a poet. A year later, his best friend, Arthur Hallam, passed away of a stroke, being very, very young, in his 20s, and very uncertain about what he wanted to do, just like his friend who was named Alfred. Anyway, but that really changed Alfred, and he decided to write some more serious poems. And in the 1840s, he came out with absolutely magnificent poetry. But 1850 was a publication of In Memoriam, an elegy that he wrote to his friend Arthur Hallam. And there's a couple of passages for it I'd like to quote to you. A time to sicken and to swoon when science reaches forth her arms to feel from world to world and charms her secret from the latest moon. And he's talking here probably about the discovery of Neptune in 1846. But and his last name I'm sure you all know by now, is Tennyson. I wish I had known this man because I think we would have had a lot in common. I do have a lot in common with his great-great-grandson, who I do know and who is a professor of astronomy of all things at University College London. And I asked him about his great-great-grandfather, and he said, oh no, I try to be completely separate, don't even like to talk about it, and that's it. When I walked into his office, the first thing I saw was a framed portion of a little bit of In Memoriam. And I pointed to it, and I pointed to him and I said, so you really don't like to pay any attention to his poetry, do you? And he said, well, just kidding a little bit. We had a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I'm now going to end with the close of that poem In Memoriam that Tennyson wrote, where he talks in the poem about the rise of modern cosmology. And he talks about whether something that really was way ahead of his time. He's talking about whether the universe will expand forever, as we now believe it will, or whether it will stop and then start contracting and end in a big crunch. In his time, that goal was not understood. But later, understanding of Hubble's constant opened the great question of whether it will really end in a big crunch, in which the universe is condensed into a single point as it existed about 13.7 billion years ago. And that point, or whether it will expand forever, is the ending of In Memoriam. And at the end, he goes back again to the loss of his best friend, and he writes, that friend of mine who lives in God, that God which ever lives and loves, one God, one law, one element, and one far off divine event to which the whole creation moves. Thank you, Terry, and back to you.
Thank you, David. That was beautiful. We sure do appreciate it. Next up, I would like to introduce Carroll Orch, which many people already know Carroll. He is the president of the league, and he is going to give an update on what's going on, what might be coming up. So Carroll, you take it.
Thank you, Terry. And it's always good to hear from David Levy with his words of wisdom. And he went down memory lane a little bit there to begin with. And that reminds us, and many of you probably already heard this, but the league is celebrating its 75th anniversary this year. There's lots of activities going on, and it's amazing when we start digging in the archives what we will find. Some things we had no idea were back there 50 years ago. And thanks to Chuck Allen for doing a ton of work on the history part of it, as well as being on that committee. And for example, we found out that back in those days, the youth movement was alive and well in the Astronomical League. And I know each group in many different fields right now, many different hobbies, are catering to the youth group to try to get more members or people interested in the hobby. So it's a repeat in a way, but it's really refreshing to go back in our archives and find out that in those days, the youth were interested. And I think we're also, and I think Scott can attest to this, we're seeing a resurgence this year.
Oh, yeah.
With the pandemic situation of interest in astronomy, telescope sales, and across the board. Another thing that's happened is that among many of our clubs and societies, we've noticed that they're becoming extremely creative. You know, what we're doing right here now is something we wouldn't have thought about doing a year and a half or 2 years ago. But Scott, being the technological guru he is, he embraced it, and boy, he's every place Scott is. And thank you so much, Scott, for the great efforts. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I know of an instance just recently where one observatory from a local club is involved in non-eyepiece type viewing outreach for the public. And that might seem like an obvious thing, but until the club was pushed to do that, they had not even thought about doing that. they were concerned about having the bodies inside a small little room and observatory, which would hold maybe 10 people at a time. And that was the extent of it. If you had a major event on the weekend, whatever time the observatory was open, then it was extremely hard for everyone to get a view at the eyepiece. And so they're becoming very creative. They're coming up with alternatives and having more of a mass situation for people to look at the images at a different location. It's not quite the same as looking through the eyepiece. However, if the odds are that many people might not have time with the crowds getting to see the objects through the eyepiece, then that's not a bad option to at least get to see the image. So I think we'll see a lot of enhancements continuing from that situation. For the club members and society members of the Astronomical League, the regions, and so on tuning in tonight, I would like to remind you, many of you already know, but we are postponing AlCon 2021. Again, this year, we'll have the in-person one in Albuquerque next July in Albuquerque. However, we have an extremely promising event planned, and thanks to Terry Mann and Chuck Allen for agreeing to co-chair that event, AlCon 2021 virtual. It's going to be a very different situation, but like these type of Zoom calls we're on, it's going to allow us to reach a far potentially bigger audience than we would ever think of reaching otherwise. And one of the things we have come up with is encouraging clubs across the region, not regions, well, regions, but across the country, to get involved more. Sometimes the league, we need to look at different ways of keeping in contact with our local organizations, clubs, and other organizations. So what we've come up with this year is asking for door prizes from our individual clubs so that they can, individual clubs can showcase what's going on in their societies. And it's really a good opportunity to bring, do an even better job of bringing our clubs together in one of our league activities. So we're really looking forward to that. In fact, just today, I received 3 or 4 inquiries from our local clubs, our national clubs, wanting to know what they could do to help and thinking it's a tremendous idea. So we're really looking forward to that. And I might make the point that Chuck and Terry are both co-chairs of that event. They've had lots of experience around conventions, and it promises to be an extremely good event. And let's see, that's about all I've got for right now. So I think I'll turn it back to Terry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carroll. Appreciate that. Yeah, there's a lot going on. It's amazing how quickly and how busy this year has been and how quickly it's going by. Everything seems to be coming up on us pretty quickly. So hopefully we'll all be able to travel and get out again by the end of the year. And next year, hopefully we'll see everybody in Albuquerque. Do you know for sure that our dates will be in July?
Yes, they will be in July. That is already locked in for, I forget the exact dates. And of course, our dates for AlCon 2021 virtual are August 19th through the 21st, which is a Thursday through Saturday. And Chuck and Terry very efficiently set up the schedule, a early evening schedule, a lunch break, and then another session later on in the evening. So should work extremely well.
Yeah, it should work well. And we've got a lot of people that we're talking to about being a speaker, a lot of variety. It's really interesting how much people want to be involved in something like this. I think it gives them a chance again to just kind of reach out to the public, meet more people, even though it is on Zoom. It just keeps us all involved a little bit more. So thank you again, Carroll. I sure do appreciate it.
Thank you, Terry.
Yep. And now I am going to ask the questions. We have changed the way we do questions on the Global Star Party, but on the League's live event, we are still going to do them like we used to do it. I will ask 3 questions. Whoops. And we will answer those and award the prizes on the same show instead of waiting. So I am going to share my screen. and get going here. It takes my computer a minute. There we go. And as you can see, you will be hearing a lot about Alcon Virtual coming up. We look forward to having all of you there. Scott is broadcasting it, so we will be right here where you're watching. So here are the questions for tonight. Oh, I guess better wait and do that. These are the door prizes for tonight. 3 of the winners will each win 1 tote bag, and so that all 3 will win the same thing. Please send your answers to secretary@astroleague.org. And please send them as soon as possible, because I will announce the winners after the keynote tonight. So try to get those answers in before 8 o'clock if you can. And Carroll Orch will be the one to send you a letter to get all the information from you to where to ship it to. All right, here is the first question. What kind of eclipse is happening on May 26th this year? And again, send it to secretary@astroleague.org. Question 2, what color is the hottest star? And question 3, what meteor shower peaks on May, and this is behind, I have to move my pictures, on May 5th? All right, so I'm going to stop there. And please, like I said, send your answers in as soon as possible, because I will start, I'm going to use the random number generator to do this, and I will list all the names. So please send them in by 8 o'clock, and I will be working on that in the background. So.
Great.
Okay. Next up, what I would like to do is introduce Chuck Allen. And Chuck is the vice president of the league. And as you heard, Chuck and I are co-chairing Alcon Virtual. But I would like to have Chuck introduce our next speaker. So Chuck, if you would, please.
Be happy to. Thank you, Terry, and everyone. Between the ages of 11 and 18, I had the privilege of being a member of a group called the Louisville Junior Astronomical Society. This is a society that produced at least 4 professional astronomers and several physics lab directors and a number of other professors in different topics. It was a precocious group, and it had a lady by the name of Virginia Lepard who sponsored it. She often provided transportation for kids to get to public events and observations. She encouraged people to lead, to teach, to speak, to present papers, and to do research. In fact, it was Mrs. Lepard who first put me on to Duke University when I was 13 years old, and it stuck, and I ended up going there. To have people like that involved in your life, along with your parents, who are also incredibly supportive, is very critical. And the opportunities provided by junior societies is extraordinary. Well, what happened to them? In the 1950s and 60s, we had as many as 13 junior societies represented at league conventions. One that comes to mind, looking at the historical records, in Denver in 1959, when 13 different societies were there. This was the era of the International Geophysical Year, the space age, the atomic age was new. The Bell Science series was causing families to gather around TVs to listen to programs about blood and about the sun and about cosmic rays. And then came the 1970s and light pollution in Vietnam and more important social causes at the time. And as a result of that, the junior societies all disappeared, partly because of light pollution, I think, that made backyard astronomy in the vicinity of cities very difficult. And transportation to distant dark sky sites was just not an option for a lot of kids and a lot of parents. Tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce to you a young man, an extraordinary young man named Connell Richards, who lives in Clark Summit, Pennsylvania. He is an honor student and a senior at Abingdon Heights High School. He is not only a member of the National Honor Society, but it was also invited to join the Slavic National Honor Society because of his academic achievements in Russian and studying Russian in high school. He is also president of the Russian club in the high school. He's on the swim team, a backstroker and a freestyler. He is vice president of the team leadership committee at his local library, and very, very active in astronomy in the high school and in the community. He's already written a major article for Reflector, which will appear in an upcoming issue. He's an astrophotographer. He spent most of the last Mars opposition and apparition studying Mars through a 6-inch reflector. Conducted public outreach for the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction last Christmas. He's already achieved 3 of the Astronomical League's Observing Awards, and he's a member of Astronomy Ireland, a group, an outreach group in Ireland, which he's participating in actively. But more importantly, perhaps he's the president and founder of the Abington Heights High School Astronomical Society. And that is only the 2nd junior society that I know of in the entire Astronomical League now, and hopefully the beginning of a new trend to get juniors back into astronomy. So it's my pleasure right now to introduce Connell Richards.
Thank you very much, Chuck. I appreciate the invitation to be here. So, of course, as you mentioned, we're facing a situation in amateur astronomy right now where we're looking to get youth involvement back to where it used to be. And we're looking to bring new people into the hobby and keep ourselves sustained in passing this valuable knowledge of science and astronomy along. So, of course, as you and Carroll were talking about earlier, the junior societies, they used to be all around the country, and the 70s and a lot of the consequences that followed from that sort of brought them down. And we're seeing right now a resurgence in interest in amateur astronomy and science and engineering and space flight and a lot of these things. And because of this, I founded the Abington Heights High School Astronomy Club, not only to share my own interest in astronomy and my own observing efforts, but also to engage other people and get them to join the hobby and do these things themselves. So I'll start by screen sharing here if I can. I apologize if this takes a little bit. I'm working with some new equipment here. So please let me know if you can see this. So I'm going to share the screen. Go to my presentation here.
We see it.
All right, very good, very good. I'll put this up.
There you go.
So I'll start off. I'm titling this Reaching Out to the Future. It shares the same title as the Reflector article that Chuck referenced. And there's a lot I wanted to pack in there because not only are we just reaching out, we're not just bringing out a telescope and showing people what's in the sky. It goes a lot beyond what we're doing in the present day. So when you're telling someone to look through a telescope and you're describing what they see, or when you're creating a video online or doing a talk like we are tonight, you're not just showing people something that's up right now, you're engaging them and you're developing a passion in them to go and study these things on their own. So you have sustainability built into the outreach that we're doing. And that's something really critical we need to understand to continue the hobby forward. So I'll give you a little bit of background around myself. Chuck talked a little bit about some of my awards. So I've been observing for 5 years now. I received my first telescope when I was 13. I turned 13 and my parents gave me a 6-inch reflector that I still use to this day. I see there's the names over here, but you can see that over on the right. That was me observing the solar eclipse of 2017 down in Clayton, Georgia. I remember looking through that telescope for the first time. I remember setting it out and I didn't really have too much guidance with it. I remember I'd been reading about astronomy for a long time as a kid. I had these books. I remember vividly going through this one diagram of the space shuttle. It showed where they put the payloads in the cargo bay and space lab and the different decks of the crew compartment. And I was just fascinated by the tools we were using to explore space and some of the objects up there. I also remember reading about all the planets as a young kid, and that kind of sustained me into my teenage years. I thought about it a lot. And then I asked my parents the one day, I said, I'd love to have a telescope just to explore this for myself. And that's where I really got into astronomy and the hobby as we would know it. So I remember the first night I took that out and, I was kind of fumbling with it, trying to figure out what I was doing. I made a mistake that, it's a little embarrassing, a little funny. I remember I had the lens cap on the telescope as I was trying to look at the moon, and only took off the collimation cap that goes on the end. So it was this little 20 millimeter diameter piece that I'm using to try to figure out with my telescope. So eventually I learned to collimate, I learned to star hop and find different targets. And I remember that satisfying moment when I finally set my eyepiece for the moon, on the moon for the first time. And it was only, 30 times magnification. I'm trying to focus, I'm trying to learn and just engage myself with this new piece of equipment. And it was a beautiful view. I could see Copernicus and Tycho. I remember it was a waxing gibbous moon, the different ray systems, the different seas. And that really hooked me into it. I knew at that point that when I looked through the telescope for the first time, there was nothing else I'd rather be doing. That remains to this day. I'm still going out every chance I can with that telescope or my binoculars, or even just stepping outside and taking in the view to see what I can see. So right now, some of my favorite targets are star clusters and spiral galaxies. Since I've started engaging in some of the League programs, I found the Universe Sampler and some of the deep sky programs like the Binocular Messier. They've been a lot of fun to go through and see some of the different targets and explore a couple different things. Of course, it's very hard to pick a favorite, as an astronomer, because I remember I started off with the planets and seeing Jupiter and the moon, and then I got to galaxies, I went to planets. I just did everything and anything I could, like the eclipse right there. There was no stopping me with, setting my sights on whatever I wanted to with that telescope. And a lot of what engaged me in this hobby at first, leading up to getting that telescope, was reading and books and TV programs and that kind of a thing, because I could go into a book and, like I said, I looked at the space shuttle, I looked at the different planets, and that kind of took me to these different worlds and showed me what they were like. And then I learned that I wanted to do that myself and see if I could go there in a sense with my telescope. And of course, I'm very excited to share this hobby with others. And that led me to starting my astronomy club in high school. Let's see, can I fast forward this? Pardon me just for a second. Like I said, I'm using some new equipment. So in my junior year of high school, around the start, I remember I was talking with some friends about some of the observing work I was doing. And at that time, one of the big things I was doing was going through the Virgo galaxy cluster. And I'd never seen that many galaxies in one spot before. I was trying to work my way through the Messier catalog, trying to learn the ropes of deep sky observing. And that was a project that really hooked me. So I remember I was telling my friends, oh, I saw M87 and M86 and M84 and all these different elliptical galaxies. And I was talking about galaxies like M104 maybe, where you can see these dark lanes in the spiral arms. And, they could see my passion for the subject, and that got them interested too. I remember some of them saying, yeah, I remember I'd go out sometimes if I was out in the country and use some binoculars and check out the whole Milky Way and everything like that. So I knew I had a base and a couple of friends who were interested in this. And at the beginning of my junior year, I thought, I'm going to start an astronomy club. I have to share this with everybody and kind of get it out there. So down at the bottom, you can see a picture. This was from our April meeting just earlier this week. We were actually looking at one of the League's handouts that was posted to the Facebook page of the different objects in the night sky. And one of the things I've been mainly focusing on with my astronomy outreach is getting people just to look up. I want to teach that they don't need the most expensive telescope or the nicest equipment or the best experience or the best mentor or whatever. They just need to go out and explore it for themselves. So I was talking about how you can find the planets along the ecliptic there, some of the spring constellations coming up and the objects you can find there. One of the things they found particularly interesting is that I was talking about what we would call as astronomers galaxy season when we're out observing. So of course, how the Milky Way, the plane of the Milky Way is very low along the horizon, and we're looking straight up out of it and seeing different galaxies without having to look through all of the debris and dust and star clusters and everything like that along the band of the Milky Way. And that was one of our big steps in going from just naked eye observing and planet watching and those kinds of things to really deep sky observing and learning how to interact with our sky a little bit more. So we're committed to astronomy outreach, mostly for teens and young people. I've done a lot of work through this club and through the library in teaching people to look up. I've talked about how to observe meteor showers, how to observe comets in the night sky. We had NEOWISE over the summer. That was a big deal, of course. So I shared some of my photography there with people. And that proved really powerful in kind of getting people to hook into the hobby and understanding that this was something they could do for themselves. And it wasn't just something on a television program. It wasn't just something that the Hubble Space Telescope could see. It was something that they could see for themselves. And recently, I've decided that I wanted the club to join the Astronomical League. Earlier this year, I was checking out how I could forward my observing a little bit and seeing, what other programs were out there where I could gain more observing skill. And I came across the Astronomical League. I joined in January, and it seemed logical that the first program I would complete would be the Lunar Program. That was one of the simplest ones. I had some observations behind me for that one. And Chuck Allen was the advisor for that. I remember getting in touch with him through there. And he said, look, if there's anything you're interested in doing, anything with the league, I'd be more than happy to help you. And that was quite a great introduction. I felt very honored to have that, because he understood, like he mentioned earlier, that youth societies and getting young people involved in this hobby are very critical for its continuation. So we got talking and went back and forth a little bit. I told him a little bit about my club and some of the observing work I was doing. And he said, well, there aren't many junior league societies these days. They all kind of died out in the 70s. The space race was gone. The Vietnam War took people away from their hobbies and their interests like this. And we had to capitalize on the new resurgence in astronomy and science interest. So he's been helping me throughout the process of getting our club in the Astronomical League. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll be the league's newest member as a junior society, one of only 2 right now. So as we finalize that, we're really excited to share some of our programs with the rest of the league and teach others on how they can engage with teens. So like I mentioned, planet watching, stargazing, really basic things, the foundational skills that I've been looking to build have greatly benefited through the Astronomical League's observing programs that they provided, the about 70 plus of them that I've been going through and that I've been teaching my other club members to go through. I've talked about the Messier programs with binoculars. I've talked about the lunar programs. And one of the great things about those is that they build on all levels of skill. So you can start off with something like the universe sampler or the lunar program and work your way up to stellar evolution or globular clusters, planetary nebulae, all these different kinds of things. So one of the big things that are involved with doing outreach to teenagers is social media, and we have to adapt to a scrolling culture. We have a very fast-paced environment that we're trying to do our outreach in. And it's essential to understand this to reach teens and reach young people and keep things going. So as I was starting up my club, I found great attendance. I was really happy to see members coming. In fact, when I was looking to start the club at the beginning of my junior year, this was an interesting story. I went to the principal and I said, what would it take for me to get this club started? And he said, Conal, it sounds like a great idea. You'll have to write up a proposal for us, find an advisor. And I'd also like to have a list of 10 or 15 people with a demonstrated interest in the club, just to know that the club can sustain itself. And I said, okay, that sounds great. And I remember going around the school. It's a school of about 1,000 kids, and 15 isn't too bad for a club. That's considered a good standard. And I came back to his office 2 or 3 days later with a list of 37 names, and I handed that to him kind of with a smile on my face. And I remember watching his eyes bug out. He said, this is really amazing. Please go ahead and have your club. And right from there, that's when we were having our first meetings. So going through that, I found people were thrilled to ask about astronomy. They wanted to know about black holes. They wanted to know about what the latest crewed missions to the International Space Station were doing. They wanted to know about the rovers on Mars. They wanted to know about how they could observe things for themselves with a telescope. They wanted to know everything, just like I did when I was starting to get involved in astronomy. So I created a couple of social media accounts and a website of my own. I'll show these in just a little bit to give you a bit more of an in-depth look into them. So I started off, you can see here, this was the club Instagram page. I remember thinking, where could I go to access where teens are, where they're kind of living online? This was, of course, in the COVID era. We're looking at how do we adapt to people being kind of stuck at home, and it's very hard to get out and engage with the club. So I created this Instagram page, and you can see we have a couple of different posts on here. This was talking about Lord Ross's reflector. This was talking about an event Lowell Observatory did, the I Heart Pluto Festival, surrounding the anniversary of Pluto's discovery by Clyde Tombaugh. We have Yuri Gagarin there. We recognize the 60th anniversary of his flight into space as the first person to go there. And then this is what I'm talking about by doing short, bite-sized amounts of information. So this was our St. Patrick's Day post. I thought I'd do one about Lord Ross's telescope in Ireland, once the largest operating telescope in the world. I think it was before Palomar that surpassed it. But anyway, Teenagers are very absorbed and just captured by these short bits of information. So I'm thinking, maybe I can't hold a 40-minute club meeting right now. Maybe I can't record a long video or a long lecture. How do I reach people with these short bits of information? So I wrote up a post like this that would talk about Lord Ross exploring M51, for example, and people found those very interesting. That was quite successful in kind of getting these little bits of information out. And then, of course, I knew some people were excited to go and explore these things for themselves. And I wanted to provide a venue for them to do that and look into things with a little more depth. So this is a screenshot from our website. I provided some of the photography myself. Being an astrophotographer, they were a lot of wide field things. I talk about the Astronomical League here. I have a list of resources I'll show you in a little bit that I collected. And these were things that really got people involved because they could start off with the bite-sized things on something like an Instagram page and then go more involved by looking at our website and seeing some of the resources that I recommended as a more experienced amateur astronomer. So if I can go out here, I can show you the website and walk you through how I designed it and some of the different benefits that came from that with people looking to explore astronomy. This was through mid to late 2020 as I was developing this website. That's where a lot of my club activities were based. So I'm going to drag the names down here. Pardon me just for a second. So members are greeted with this page. Of course, they go on. I have a little bit about us. I talked about our purpose as a club to educate and share the value of astronomy and how it's a humbling and character building experience, in Carl Sagan's words. And that seemed to resonate with a lot of people because I remember saying to all these different students, what's a black hole? What happens if I go near one? When's the next rocket going to the space station? They wanted to know all these different things. And I was able to concentrate these in one spot. So if you go on the website, I have the section about the events we're doing, a little bit about the Astronomical League. And then these are the resources I collected. That was one of my favorite things to kind of build as I was putting this together, because I had all these websites and books and things that I would go to that people were fascinated by as amateur astronomers. And I knew these would be a great gateway to getting everyday students who had a passing interest in space. Maybe they'd explored it once or twice and wanted to go into it a little bit more. So I referenced Sky and Telescope magazine here, a couple of different science blogs. Night Watch by Terence Dickinson was one of the big books that got me involved into astronomy. And of course, his other book, what was it called? The Backyard Astronomer's Guide. That's one I highly recommend to people. I recommended a lot of Carl Sagan's books, kind of talking about science for those who might not have wanted to go out with a telescope, but just wanted to read about some of the discoveries and history behind this science that we love. I talked about photography for those looking to get into what I was doing, the astrophotography, some wide fields. This was while Comet Neowise was passing through our skies. In the evenings and the early mornings, I photographed satellites. People were really interested in those, and I wanted to teach them how they could do that for themselves. So of course, I had to include spaceflight as well. I personally have a fascination with engineering and the space race and the planetary science missions, especially those of the 70s and 80s, like Voyager. And I wanted to share those with people through the missions that were going up now, through Spaceflight Now's launch calendar. And then I realized through COVID that I had to come up with some way to create an event and get people engaged in the club once again, because I felt like we were losing our enthusiasm through COVID. We had to figure out a way to engage. And I came up with a program in October called Mars Week. This was while Mars was passing through the sky during its opposition. This was, of course, a very favorable one. It was high in the sky. It was very bright, very close. I took my telescope several times out myself. And I remember over a course of 2 or 3 months, I'd observed what Mars looked like at a certain time. And of course, Mars rotates about 40 minutes slower than the Earth does. So I was able to get sketches for every one of the longitudes at least once along the Martian surface. And I combined those sketches, I put them all together and posted them myself to social media. I put them up in the club meetings when we were doing presentations, and people were just blown away that you could see the surface of another planet from some very modest equipment in your backyard. That was very fun to bring to people. So as this was going on, Perseverance, Tianwen-1, Hope, they're all launching from their respective countries in the summer. And of course, a lot of those have arrived recently and done some great science. I collected a lot of the resources about those missions and about the observing I was doing here Some were from NASA, some were from Sky and Telescope, of course. Lowell Observatory, they had a lot of fun programming. And then I found some talks on Mars rovers and Curiosity and Opportunity and the science that they were doing. And I wanted to create some myself. So I created a video series. Mars Week was a week-long event that I designed, and we were focusing on the opposition and the missions. So I created a series of about 4 or 5 videos, and we focused on a different topic each time. I put these all on the website. They focused on climate and geology, the history and exploration of Mars. You can see Observing Mars here. That was about a lot of the work I was doing. And then finally, towards the end, we wanted to talk about the future of humans going there. People were asking me about SpaceX quite a lot. So that was a great opportunity to talk about the work they're doing with Starship and some of the other missions going there like Perseverance and Ingenuity that are on the surface right now. Now, if I can go over here, I can show you the Instagram page I used for the Astronomy Club. I hadn't been on social media too much myself, so I was trying to think of the best way to reach people. And I came to Instagram as the best resource because it worked very professionally. It was essential in reaching something a lot of young people were involved in. And it was something that I could get that bite-sized media, that short form text and everything I was talking about earlier on here to share with other people. So I have the Perseverance rover here. I talked about the Geminids meteor shower, I Heart Pluto. There was an eclipse that was going on, a partial lunar eclipse. Those were really fun to share with people because they were hands-on things that they could either go and learn about or go and observe themselves. So I'll go back to my slides here. Hope everyone can see everything all right here. Like I said, I apologize. I'm just working with some new equipment here.
It's all fine.
Oh, good. Wonderful, Scott. Thank you. So finally, I wanted to talk about what I'd like to share with the rest of the league for astronomy outreach with teenagers. This is where we come to a really critical point. We're looking at focusing on the future of our hobby and bringing things to people who maybe have not engaged with this before, have an interest, but not really a way to access this information. This was the most important part of my outreach, and I think one of the central issues that we're looking at in our hobby right now. So, of course, I mentioned it's essential to us sustaining our hobby and our interests, but I want to talk a little bit more about how I did that and how I reached those people. So I was asked quite a lot about, like I said, missions going to the space station, the current events in astronomy, the latest discoveries, and I found that current events and topics that really captured people's imaginations were the most effective. So as I mentioned earlier, I talked about a little bit of history, but then I found that modern astronomy was very interesting to teenagers. They wanted to know all about when the European Southern Observatory photographed the black hole in M87. That was a really fascinating story to a lot of people. When SpaceX was doing their missions over the summer with their second demonstration, with the 2 crew members test flying Dragon to the space station, as well as the Crew 1 and then the Crew 2 mission that launched just this morning, those were really interesting to a lot of people. And I realized that it's about young people engaging with the world. They wanted to see what was going on in their communities, what was going on in their country, and how they could go to that directly. So that's a lot of why I set up the website, a lot of why I shared some of my own observing, and that led to a lot of my photography efforts. So through COVID, I'm developing this website, I'm developing these social media accounts, and the photography I was doing, some of the astrophotography of NEO-Ys and satellites, that brought people to meet a lot of the programs that we were doing. So they could see these things out in the world, and then they could see what I was doing, and they could understand that it was something they could explore themselves. Social media was really critical in all of this because we're living in a virtual environment right now. Obviously, we're all speaking to each other on Zoom. Everything for school was being done on Zoom, and I needed a way to get my members and other young people engaged in astronomy without having to go out and risk anything with COVID, or, I didn't want too much of a physical hurdle with a telescope or binoculars or equipment they weren't familiar with. So that's why we focused a lot on the Christmas conjunction. I focused a lot on the Perseverance rover. Of course, people could look up and they could see Mars moving through the sky. They could see it retrograde in constellations. They could see it dim and brighten throughout the opposition. That was one of the best central things to capturing teens' interest, was a lot of that astrophotography. So going forward, what I'd like to share with some of my fellow league members and fellow club presidents throughout the country is that teenagers represent the future of our hobby. and we need to think about the best ways to engage them. I found that through social media, through photography, through current events. Those were things that really captured people's imaginations. And I found the best ways to capitalize on those were short form media through my Instagram accounts, as well as the website that I developed and kind of put together with a lot of my favorite different resources for those who are interested in going a little further. So I'm happy to hear from anyone else if what their experience with young people in astronomy has been, but I've been really happy to share this with others. So thank you very much.
Excellent.
Thank you, Conal. My gosh, that's amazing. But I got a question. Could you put your finger on any one thing that really appealed to teens everywhere?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it was human spaceflight that captured their interest the most. Like I was talking about throughout 2020, SpaceX was testing a lot of their rockets. And though they might not have much to do with astronomy and the Astronomical League, people were looking to that in a way that seemed to be like how people were doing in the 60s with the Apollo missions and the Gemini and Mercury programs. I've been asked over and over again, online and in my club meetings, about what that's been all about. People just want to know what our astronauts are doing, what experiments are going on in orbit, what's happening with the space station, the Lunar Gateway. They're just fascinated by that aspect of human spaceflight. I think it's that sort of human touch and point of engagement in that really draws people to that.
Yeah. That's amazing. Do you find do they think a lot about maybe they might be one of the people to stand on Mars one day?
A little bit. I've been asked that some, could I get to Mars myself? And I said, I don't know. I'm just the kid with a telescope who looks up once in a while. But, like you say, they do see it as a part of our future, as a spacefaring country and a country that's centered around science. That made me really happy to see, because I've heard in doing youth outreach, in fact, I'll tell you a story about this. So I remember when I was first getting involved in astronomy and kind of figuring out observing. This was in 2016. In April of 2016, I got that telescope. And I'd spent some time observing with it. And I remember going to the Northeast Astronomy Forum. I got the flyer in the mail because I was a Sky and Telescope subscriber. And I went to NEAF in 2017 to kind of see what it was all about. And my cousin, about the same age as me, she's very interested in astronomy. We went around to all the different booths, looking through the latest telescopes and the latest equipment, and got to check out some of the cool books there. But we were with my dad and my uncle, and everywhere we went, people would pull us aside and they'd say, "Oh, that's nice you brought the kids." And they'd look at my father or my uncle and say, so what are you interested in looking at? We have these refractors and these telescopes. And my dad would say, no, it's the kids here who came because they're interested in astronomy. And they thought that was amazing. People would light up when we told them that. Mm-hmm. In fact, Scott, I'm not sure if you remember this or not, but I remember going to Explore Scientific over there in 2017. Mm-hmm. These two young kids show up and they're checking out all the eyepieces there. And it was a pleasure to meet you there and see some of the other people in astronomy who are making all these changes.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm talking about. It was really fascinating for the amateurs who'd grown up with the Apollo program, or they'd grown up watching all the planetary science missions go off in the 70s and 80s, and seeing these young people go in and enjoying the hobby. But anyway, to answer your question, that's where a lot of the interest is coming back from. People are seeing that there's a human connection up there and that there's things that they can be involved in. And that's why we're seeing this resurgence, I think, even in spite of light pollution and in spite of people saying, well, young people don't have the time, they don't have the interest. It's there without a doubt. We just need to know how to access it.
Right.
One thing I'm wondering, Conal, if you've noticed within your own club, something that we observe in many clubs around the country, and that is the diverse interests that people have in being a part of a club, such as, for example, people who like to observe, people who like to do astrophotography, people who like to work with computers, people who like to create and maintain social media, people who like to write, people who like to teach or do public outreach. Do you find that maybe drawing these different interests to your club might help sustain it?
That has helped to sustain it, even as I started up in the past 2 years. I've had different officers with different interests. Myself, I've been mostly focusing on the observing and a lot of the hard astronomy work, but I've had others who've thought more about the science outreach aspect of it and some of the writing, some of the journalism involved. So I'll supply them with, the science, the observations, some of the things I'm doing, and they'll be happy to write about it and do some of our social media work, and also go around the school and reach out to people, say, hey, have you seen this rocket launch? Did you see this image? Did you see this discovery? We've had plenty of room for people with diverse skills and interests, whether that be with computers, with writing, with journalism, with doing the science themselves, or kind of gathering people and sharing an interest in what's up there. I've had all levels of interest as well. People who are diehard, I know I want to study this in college, to people who, just enjoy a look at a starry night sky from a dark country place.
Have you been involved in outreach there at your school, or how's that worked out?
Sorry, what was the question?
Have you been involved in outreach there through your school, or how's that worked out?
It's been a little challenging going through the COVID situation lately. So most of our outreach has been based online. We have been able to do some of that. Where I've been focusing a lot of my outreach on lately has been through the Abington Community Library. That's my local library, where I'm the vice president of the Teen Leadership Committee there. They recently purchased a telescope and binoculars, which are still kind of going through the mail, in a black hole or wherever they are. They ordered those a while ago. But we've been looking to start some programs there through the local library. Back when Apollo hit its 50th anniversary, Apollo 11, they were doing a lot of work. They had an astronomer come in, I don't remember exactly who it was, and do some sidewalk astronomy with some of the kids, look through telescopes and that kind of a thing. And I asked about sustaining that program with the support of the high school club that I was running. So these would kind of come up as sister clubs. I'd be able to do more observing and more outreach as we would traditionally know it there, but then going through the pandemic and going through online classes and navigating some of that, I've been doing more virtual outreach events in the school, like what I did with Mars Week.
Excellent. Wow.
I'm also curious, do you see a lot of women involved?
We do, actually. It hasn't been a strictly male interest like some might think it is. And even though we haven't done a strictly women in STEM or women in astronomy event, many of the officers, many of the members have been women, and they've been fascinated by the potential of going into this as a hobby, as a profession, or just as an interest. So that's really made me happy to see, is that there's a diverse interest, not only in skills, but in the types of people we're bringing in, because the interest is really universal. I don't think it's limited to one group or another. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a question of accessibility, and we leave this open to everyone. And I think that's what's contributed to more of a balance in men and women being involved in a hobby like this.
Sure. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay.
I just wonder, and I said it in the chat here, I wonder where Connell Richards will be in 20 years from now. Are we going to see him as a planetary scientist, an educator, a doctor? This guy's going to go places, and it's going to be fun to watch it happen. So I look forward to it.
Well, thank you. In 20 years, I hope I'm still observing. That's what I'll be doing.
I've learned that there are plenty of things to observe to keep you busy for the rest of your life.
Oh, I won't run out. There's no doubt.
Well, Conal, I look forward to you already being a member, but I look forward to your club being a member. You are exactly what we like to see all youth coming in, and so passionate about their hobby. Can tell you really enjoy what you do. And we love seeing that. And you would definitely be a large help in helping others get started just the way that you have. Just because you love the hobby and teaching outreach, you do an amazing job. And I am so grateful you came here tonight to speak. I look forward to seeing what you become.
Thank you very much, Terry. Thank you for inviting me to the event. I had a lot of fun talking about it and sharing it with others. I hope the work I'm doing and the work we're doing with the League, I hope that inspires a lot of other clubs to go out and share this with young people in their communities and keep our hobby going. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you, Conal.
Yes, thank you. Scott, why don't we do about a 10-minute break, and we are going to come back with Howard.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Conal, that was fantastic.
Thank you very much, Chuck. I appreciate
It
it.
was wonderful.
It was.
And we'll be tapping that again soon.
Oh, no, I have no problem with
Yeah.
that.
Are you all electing officers for next year now in your club, or do you wait till September to do that, or August? I guess it would be.
Usually it's towards the end of the year, and we select the members on our own. So I found that was a process for a lot of Abington Heights clubs. We did that in the Russian club as well. When I was starting the astronomy club, like I said, I had a couple of friends who had an interest in it, and I picked them to provide a succession plan. And I've been talking to my vice president right now, and some of the work she'll do when I leave. I'll be sort of an Astronomical League coordinator, and she'll be selecting some of the newer people. But there has been a good base there in sustaining it.
Do you think you may try to do something similar in college too?
I've been thinking a lot about it, actually. Some of the universities I'm looking into right now, a lot of them in Pennsylvania, have different astronomy clubs, or even astronomy as a minor or a major. One of the ones I'm looking at right now is Penn State, and at their main campus, they have a 24-inch reflector that they use just as a club, just for fun. So I'm like, I might have to go to college just for the massive mirror, the aperture fever.
You wouldn't mind using it, in other words.
No, not at all.
No, I meant if they may have astronomy clubs at most universities, I'm not sure. But if they don't, I was wondering if you might be interested in trying to do the same thing you did in your high school.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to join and try to build a connection there with the league, like I've done with my own club. Or if there is no club, I had no trouble starting this one. There was no trouble finding the interest. I'd be able to do that again. And of course, build from some experience that time and be able to work through with the league through some of our observing programs and get more of a sturdy foundation there.
Yeah. That's great. College, is a College Station? Penn State, is that the town?
It's State College, right?
State College, yeah. College Station is in Texas. Yeah, 24-inch there might be actually pretty in pretty good shape. I don't know what the light pollution's like there, but it's not terrible.
There's not too much out there. It's mostly just the college town in the middle with cows. But that's one of the universities I've been looking into right now. You mentioned, I remember you were telling me this on the phone a couple of weeks ago about your meeting with Ohio State, and you said they had a very long question and answer session. They were just thrilled to have someone who had some experience in it.
Only 2 hours.
Only 2 hours.
That's got to be some sort of world record. I mean,
Actually, this wasn't too bad tonight, but I'd like to add my echo what Chuck has been trying to say. I think we've really hit on a live one here with you, Conal. And I hope that you will join us on our regular Tuesday Global Star Parties coming up, and be able to add your own enthusiasm to what we do. And I think your most important point is that you guys and gals are the future of not just astronomy, but the future, not just a hobby, but of astronomy itself. Because if all of you just go through lives, go opening up a business or doing whatever it is you do, who's going to be left to look at the night sky and wonder and ask questions? And I think in a way, Conal, that what you're doing is perhaps the most important thing anybody can do. And now you did a really good job of it today.
Thank you, Dr. Levy. I appreciate it. Like you said, this does build the foundation for the hobby, and it does get people, it keeps them interested. I'll tell you a story you'll appreciate. I remember I was at a 4th of July barbecue a couple of years ago, and we had some friends of the family there who had an interest in astronomy. The husband was a photographer. The wife, she'd done some observing of her own. And she said, I remember, back a couple of years ago when Shoemaker Levy 9 was impacting Jupiter. And she told me the story of taking a 4.5-inch reflector out there and exploring Jupiter for herself and seeing the little black impact marks from the chunks of the comet that had broken up. So the work that you did and the work that you continue to do has impacted many people and captured their fascination. And I've been very inspired by that to do myself and bring on to others.
Thank you for sharing that with me, Conal. I think that's wonderful. Maybe someday I will meet that family. But I think what you've done and what you're doing is really wonderful. And the only suggestion I can give, I think it might be echoed by the rest of the group, is never give it up. Keep on doing it, no matter what roadblocks might come in your way. Never give up the spirit, never give up the dream.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're going to find it's a hobby or perhaps a profession, but whichever it is, it's a lifetime activity, and it never ever gives up. I mean, there's always something more to do, something more to research, something more to observe, something new to photograph, some better way to photograph. The avenues for interest in astronomy are just vast, and I'm saying that as someone who started into this at age 7, and it's still limitless. So it's a great opportunity also to meet a lot of neat people in your community, at school. Gives you an opportunity to meet people really around the world, especially when you link up with organizations like ours. And I have an opportunity to meet those people. Very valuable to me, and I think it will be to you as well.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's been a pleasure just being here tonight and meeting some of the different league officers and astronomers and people who've been very passionate about this throughout most of their lives. I see no reason to ever give this up in the future. I couldn't see ever dropping it, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else. So I have, what is it, 74 programs to go if I want to go with the league's program. All the courses I could ever ask for, all the targets I could ever want to observe. I've even gone pretty far with just a 6-inch, just knocking off some of those simpler programs.
Well, you have one telescope, and so you just have 49 to go.
Right.
Yeah, 50 is kind of the standard.
That's standard.
Well,
Yeah,
I like to beat standards sometimes.
Yes, telescope.
Don't laugh. I know. I have a friend in Indianapolis who has 47 telescopes.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not kidding.
I've met many.
I'm sorry, you really don't need that many telescopes. All you need is just one more.
Yeah, that's right.
all.
I am curious, Conal, do you ever discuss light pollution with the club, or how's that ever came up as a topic? Because that is something that definitely, it doesn't keep us from doing astronomy by any means, but it definitely can affect how you walk out and see anything in your backyard, if you can see anything in your backyard.
We have discussed it a little bit so far. So of course, I think this was the first week of April, the IDA did their International Dark Sky Week.
Right.
And I was promoting that a lot on our social media. At the first meeting we had in April this month, I was talking a little bit about how light pollution may make it hard to see something like the Milky Way, as that's coming up in the summer. So I think especially more in the summer, where we have that really rich Milky Way view that is so much transformed by light pollution. If I drive even 15 minutes out of this little town, it's vastly different in the experience of seeing that. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit more in the future, but we have addressed it a little bit so far.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to add just before we start again is that when I was approximately your age, my father gave me a real encouragement to continue with astronomy. He woke up from a nap in a terrible mood, and he said, "David, all he thinks about are his damn stars." I've walked that back over in future years. I really did. And we got very, very close in future years. But that was not his best moment with me.
No.
Yeah, that's all you need.
I think once you get under really, truly dark skies, it's something you never forget.
I went to Cherry Springs State Park. I'm sure that name's familiar to a lot of you. Just in August a couple of years ago. That's an unforgettable view. Just stunning to look up at, scan the sky with binoculars. Unbelievable.
Yep.
Well, we're back. We have Howard Eskildsen coming up, and Terry, why don't you do the introductions?
I will gladly do the introduction. Howard Eskildsen is a member, and I hope I pronounced this right. Alachua, close. Astronomy Club. He is an Astronomical League member and a member of the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers. He has been interested in the sun, moon, and stars since childhood. In the years that followed after that, Howard attended medical school, raised a family, which meant he had little time for stargazing. Finally, after a quarter-century hiatus, he returned to regular observing in 2002, when his wife, Ferry, purchased him a Meade ETX 125. He has sent nearly 8,000 observations of the sun and the moon to the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers for the solar and lunar section. He has written articles on solar photography for their website. His photos have appeared in spaceweather.com, Lunar Picture of the Day, Astronomy Magazine's Photo of the Day, National Geographic, and other websites. In 2020, he was awarded the Walter Haas Observer Award from Alpo, and I think that's amazing.
It's huge.
Yes, and tonight's presentation will give a humorous overview of cosmology as portrayed in the Galaxy song from Monty Python's 1983 film, The Meaning of Life. It offers a light look of cosmology through its almost accurate lyrics. Howard, I can't wait to hear this.
I like that part. Almost accurate.
I did emphasize almost.
Okay.
Howard, thank you for being here. I sure do appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. We got things backwards. We just had the keynote address. Anything I do after Connell's presentation is just going to be an encore. That was fantastic. I mean, it brought back so many happy memories of when I got started. And then the difference was back when I got started, we didn't have computers, we didn't have cell phones. We had a landline, which was a party line in the middle of Nebraska. So anything I did was on my own. There was no club to work with, but with the enthusiasm, I can still remember that. And I just wanted to comment on, you mentioned my wife's name is Ferry, and she bought me that Meade ETX. I was going to get some little 60 millimeter thing. She says, why don't you get something that's going to be the right size? I had a sort of 6-inch reflector that I'd ground and polished the mirror myself, but after completing that, I realized I am no glass grinder, and I stopped it down to 5 inches and got to actually work. But she got me the ETX, and that worked great. And just after we moved to Florida, I had that out in our front yard because that was a place where I could see the moon and Venus, and they were both in the crescent phase. So I was looking at them. This lady came by, and she had like a 7-year-old son and maybe an 11-year-old daughter. And she says, do you mind if they look? I said, yeah, come on over. Well, we could hardly get her son off the telescope. And she was apologizing. I said, that's great. Let him look all he wants. Well, we can't do it. Her daughter looked at it, was that, yeah, stop. That's great. See you later. Boy, he had to look some more. And finally, when his mom finally pulled him away, he says, that's a great telescope. I'll bet it cost $1,000. And I says, well, it wasn't quite that much, but that was a good guess. He says, pretty close to that. And he says, wow, you sure are lucky to have a wife that buys you luxury telescopes. He had no idea how right he was. Okay, I'll go ahead and get the, let's see, I need to share the screen then, right? So I'll go ahead and share screen. Oh. Now let's see, desktop's what we need, right? I hope. Okay, let's see, allow Zoom. Oh, I don't know if I've done it yet or not.
I don't see anything yet, Howard.
I don't either. So I'm gonna close this thing down. Let's see, wait a minute, Zoom US, okay. Click lock to make privacy. Well, I think we're going to do this. Let's just start over again. So I want to share a screen. Okay. And I've got desktop is listed.
Yeah, you look at the window that you would like to share,
Okay, I've got the desktop.
and then you have to click share again.
Okay, and I'll hit share. Allow Zoom to access your screen. Open Zoom preferences. Now I'm back to Zoom US location services. I'm going to try something different. Let me just do this. I'll get this partly up and then, oops, let's see, get that down to where it's. Okay, that didn't work. I've rehearsed this and I thought we'd have it right where we wanted it, but okay, so let me just go back to this. Okay, I'm going to go back to the share screen. I've got the program opened, iPad, Safari, Finder, Finder Unknown, Microsoft PowerPoint. Okay, PowerPoint. I'll try that one, see if that works. System preferences. Well, this is becoming an exercise in frustration, looks like. Because I've got
Been there, Howard.
Pardon me? Oh,
I
you've
said I've been there.
I wonder if I should shine. I'm on a MacBook Air.
Oh, you may have to go to your preferences. So you go up to the little apple up there.
Okay, up to the apple. Okay.
Yeah, and then you have to go to your preferences and allow your MacBook or your Apple to share with Zoom.
Okay. Yeah, that's where we're at. Location contacts. It says click lock to make changes. Okay.
Yes.
I got it. Okay, use password.
If you've never done it before on your Apple, it's going to make you do that. On this side, it's open. You just
Okay, I've got it, I think.
Cool. Let's see.
It says allow the apps to record content screen while using other apps. Okay. So I've got that. Now I'll go back to share screen and see if that works this time.
Okay.
Microsoft PowerPoint. So I'm going to try and share. I'm back to system preferences again. So click lock to make changes. Use password. Unlock. Well, shoot, that's too bad.
We'll figure it out on a Mac.
On a Mac, so I'm
Okay.
sharing the screen, desktop.
Okay, so on Mac OS 10.15 Catalina, you need to allow Zoom access to screen recording to share your screen. You can do this in your system preferences, security and privacy, and screen recording.
Okay.
Check the option for Zoom.us. That may be the last part that you're not doing.
Okay, let's see.
You have to unlock the lock, and after you do that, relock the lock.
There's a box there. Okay.
Of course.
Quit and reopen. Oops, cancel. Wait a minute. Oh, I have to leave the meeting and come back, it looks like.
You can do that.
Well, let's.
You can do that. We'll wait here for you.
Okay, I'm going to get rid of.
I know some other astronomers here that have things to say.
Okay. Wait a minute. I think we're there.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, let's try share.
You're doing it.
There you go.
You are doing it. Okay, that's it.
Okay, great. Then let's go ahead and.
I don't really see the similarity here.
What? There we. Oops. Hey, wait a
There we
minute.
go.
You know what? Escape. We've got a problem here. No, we don't have a problem. I just got to get to the front. That's the very end.
Oh, okay.
Did it change?
It changed.
Okay. I've got the whole thing on here.
You are set. It's beautiful.
Okay. So basically, I don't know how many people have heard the Galaxy song, but it's something that I stumbled across and actually did a recording of it for the Tampa Bay Ukulele Society. I thought it was kind of fun. And okay, it's not working. I'm not going down. Oh, there we go. And so, or A Light Look of the Universe by me, of course. And my two main interests are the moon and the sun. And partly that's by necessity, because I live in a relatively small town, but we've got a lot of light pollution. Yesterday morning, was it yesterday morning? Yeah, I was out looking for Lyrids, and I was out for about an hour from 5 till 6. Our sun rises at 7. And I saw 3 meteors. 2 were sporadics and 1 was a Lyrid. And I just remember in Nebraska counting 20 plus 25 the first time I looked at it around 1965. But in Nebraska, the Milky Way is so bright it looked like a neon sign. And yesterday morning, I just barely detected the Milky Way going through Cygnus. So the Galaxy song. So hold on, here it comes. And pay attention to the words.
Remember that you're standing on a planet that's evolving and revolving at 900 miles an hour. It's orbiting at 19 miles a second, so it's reckoned a sun that is the source of all our power. The sun and you and me and all the stars that we can see are moving at 1,000,000 miles a day. In an outer spiral arm at 40,000 miles an hour in the galaxy we call the Milky Way. Our galaxy itself contains 100 billion stars. It's 100,000 light years size inside. It bulges in the middle, 16,000 light years thick, but out by us it's just 3,000 light years wide. We're 30,000 light years from galactic central point. We go round every 200 million years. And our galaxy is one of millions of billions in this amazing and expanding universe. The universe itself keeps on expanding and expanding in all of the directions it can whiz. Fast as it can go, speed of light you know, 12 billion miles a minute, and that's the fastest speed there is. So remember when you're feeling very small and insecure, how amazingly unlikely is your birth. And pray that there's intelligent life somewhere up in space, cause there's bugger all down here on Earth. Yeah, pray that there's intelligent life somewhere up in space, cause there's bugger all down here on Earth.
Thank you. I didn't know if I should pass out Kleenex for people to wipe their eyes after
Now
that.
there were people holding up lighters, in the audience.
There you go. So anyway, since we got through that, we'll go ahead and just kind of go through each verse, and I'll go a bit about that. Of course, no doubt that this is a planet that's evolving, and obviously it's evolving quite a bit even currently, although I'm not sure if it's evolving for better or for worse. I guess time will tell. I always think about, in one case, we've got evolution of these new species that have specialized in such and such, and then next time we're turning around talking about these are invasive species that, it's just kind of a continuation of what goes on with life. So evolution is no doubt, although honestly, I was raised a very strict fundamentalist religion. And basically what got me, I was very interested in science and astronomy, which the comment about, I could relate to the earlier comment about the father. My parents had nothing good to say about science and astronomy. And here, these were two of my main interests. And the reason I ended up finally leaving that religion is because I was also interested in geology. So I set out to prove that the Earth is only 6,000 years old. And it did not take long to figure out the rocks say otherwise. So just kind of interesting. Revolving at 900 miles per hour. They must be talking about how fast it spins around at the surface. Well, according to my figures I could come up with, the Earth is actually approximately 24,901 and 0.461 miles in circumference. Now, how they can say that accurately, I don't know, but that's the source that I had. So it'd be over 1,000 miles an hour instead of 900 miles an hour. Unless, of course, they're talking about 900 nautical miles per hour, which 1 nautical mile per hour is 1.15 statute miles, but usually they would say knots rather than nautical miles per hour. One other possibility is the latitude of the UK where the song was written, the speed would be around 700 miles per hour, and maybe 900 could be a compromise, but anyway, it's just a little bit confusing as far as the realities of it. And also, that's at this point that would be revolving about 1,000 miles an hour. Earlier on, the moon, when it formed, was probably only about 6,000 to 7,000 miles away from Earth, and or maybe a little bit farther than that. I'm No, yeah, I'm sorry, it was closer to, back up again. The moon was much closer to the Earth, and the days at that point were probably only about 6 hours long. And each year, the moon gets a little bit farther and farther away. And to conserve the angular momentum of the system, the Earth, in correspondence, has to slow down a little bit. And it'll eventually get to the point where the Earth will slow down to the point where it's in tidal lock with the sun. But that's going to be a long way off. And the moon would also be a long way off at that time. Next one, it's orbiting at 19 miles a second, so it's reckoned. And that's a pretty reasonable estimate. True orbital speed around the Earth is equal to that, to about 2 significant figures. However, that speed is not constant. When we think about Kepler's laws, that we're actually in an elliptical orbit rather than a circular orbit. So when the sun is, or when the Earth is closer to the sun, it's going to be moving faster than when it's farther from the sun. And so just for fun, you take a look at the diagram that we have here. Is the Earth closer to the sun in winter or in summer? And a look at perihelion is January 3 and aphelion is July 4. So the answer is, well, both, depending on which hemisphere. That was a trick question. Sorry about that. So, but in the northern hemisphere, of course, we're actually closer to the sun in the wintertime, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless we're not that much closer to make a lot of difference. And it's amazing that the tilt of the sun can make that much of a difference in the temperature through the seasons. That had me scratching my head for a long time as a kid. How could it do that? But it does. It says that we're orbiting a sun that is a source of all our power. And this is a calcium K image of the sun. Was taken close to the cycle 24 peak maximum. And the sun is now starting to come back. We just came out of a minimum, solar minimum in the last year and a half. And today we had 2 spot groups there, and they had a total of 10 spots. And it's getting more and more interesting to look at the sun. Source of all our power, what's almost all of our power, including solar and wind, obviously. The hydropower, well, yeah, I guess that is, isn't it? Because it's the sun that drives the evaporation, spreads the moisture about, and then causes condensation, which comes down the rivers and then goes into the hydro plants. So that definitely is solar power. And fossil fuels. We're not just burning dinosaur farts here. What we're doing is consuming fuel that was created from sunlight by plants eons ago. And it's interesting, we talk about the need for renewable sources. There will come a time when we have no choice because we're using the fossil fuels at a massive rate, at which time, sometime in the near future, there will be no fossil fuels to use. So we hope that we get this sorted out as far as other alternative sources in the meantime. Now, there are some non-solar power sources that are available to us. And this is probably one of the last ones that a person would think of if we thought, what sort of power do we get other than from the sun? And the geothermal activity, about 80% of that energy comes from radioactive decay of elements which are within the Earth. And I didn't realize this, but as I was going through some of this information, about 20% of the geothermal energy we have is actually left over from planet formation. You think that's been cooking for about 4.5 billion years. That's pretty amazing. There's one other thing that's interesting to me in this photo that has nothing to do with the energy, but look at all the steam coming out of there. Recently on Mars, there's been some calculations that maybe the water that used to cover Mars, didn't break up in the upper atmosphere and leave into space. It may have been incorporated into minerals and maybe bound underneath the surface of Mars. So there's some real suggestions that there might be a lot of water under Mars, but it never got re-released because they don't have plate tectonics to recycle the crust and bubble up the steam and stuff. So it's, when you think of it, Earth is a very special place. Another non-solar power source, lunar tidal effects. So you could imagine some sort of energy source possibly in that area with its attendant ecological problems. And then the other non-solar power sources that we have to really consider are nuclear fission, which, we have some nuclear plants, but there's been it's very problematic. And maybe someday nuclear fusion. Now, nuclear fusion, I've heard, is only about 8 to 10 years away. And I've been hearing for the last 50 years. So it'll be interesting to see if we ever can get sustainable nuclear fusion. When you think of these magnetic bottles you have to contain it with and the amount of pressure and forces, I don't know how they can even begin to manage it. But perhaps with the superconducting magnets and stuff, it may eventually become possible. But obviously with both these sources, there's quite a bit of division over fission and some confusion over fusion. So maybe that'll be an option in the future, maybe not. I'm really hoping the fusion gets going, and it's a selfish motive. I want to see more incentives for returning people to the moon, because there's an abundance of helium-3 that could be mined from the regolith of the moon, which comes from the solar wind, and that would be an excellent source of fuel if they can ever get it to work. Sun and you and me and all the stars that we can see are moving at 1 million miles a day. Well, nobody's perfect. The estimates that I've seen are closer to 12 million miles per day. So, but it's only off an order of magnitude. Okay, so I'll go into my political thing. It's not very far off. We're only off by 1 order of magnitude. Okay, well, that's too much said already. Okay, in an outer spiral arm at 40,000 miles an hour. Well, it's correct. We are in an outer spiral arm of the Milky Way galaxy. And we were talking about some neat observations we've had. The neatest observation I've ever seen of the Milky Way galaxy, I was in Colorado, a place, Mountain View was the name of the camp that I was at. We're at 8,000 feet. It was March. And when you stepped outside, besides saying, oh my gosh, it's cold, you look up and the Milky Way was this huge glowing thing. And you felt you were literally part of this Milky Way that was just expanding outward towards you. You just felt drawn into our island universe of the Milky Way. It was just really spectacular. But based on 1 million miles a day, it would be 40,000 miles an hour. But since the actual speed is closer to 12 million miles a day, or it's about 480,000 miles per hour, which is really moving right along. And it's in the galaxy we call the Milky Way. Okay, what can you say about that? That's a hard one to get wrong.
That's right.
Our galaxy itself contains 100 billion stars. Well, some estimates are a bit higher, but it's a reasonable approximation, especially when you consider this was done a few decades ago. And the estimates that we have vary from time to time as we make new discoveries, if we have new equipment. Oh, and one thing I was going to mention, you had some beautiful images from the Hubble Space Telescope. I had the privilege of taking care of a gentleman who had worked for Elmer Perkin. So I asked him what he did. He says, I designed the fine guidance system for the Hubble Space Telescope, and my wife helped assemble it in the clean room. Wow. So every once in a while, he'd bring in his paper, retirees from Elmer Perkin. We'd get to talking about that, and half the time we'd forget why he was there. He'd forget why he was there, and we didn't care. We were having too much fun. So you get to meet some really special people, and you just ask a little bit more about what they're going on. Okay, now I've been showing this picture for the last couple of slides. So for Mongo miles redeemable to your next visit to Mars, what galaxy is this? You don't have to say, you can just think it in your head. Okay, if you guessed AIM-81, call Elon immediately at the number below. Tell him Howard sent you. Sorry about that. Okay, galaxy is 100,000 light years side by side. That's the next lyric. And at the time that they wrote this, the galaxy's estimate were 100,000 miles plus or minus 100,000 light years plus or minus 20,000 light years. But there's been some recent discoveries that suggest it might be 150 or maybe 200,000 light years in diameter rather than just 100. But, you keep making more discoveries. And like I say, we have much better equipment, new things out there, and plus the Hubble has been a real workhorse. I was really delighted too when I heard that the Hubble telescope is likely to be able to continue on for several years, because the rumors were that maybe 2022, 2023, we had to bring it home because it was going to run out of operating gyros. But it sounds like they may have something around that to keep that going. I sure hope they can. It bulges in the next line is it bulges in the middle 16,000 light years thick. More recent data suggests it may be 30,000 light years at the center, especially when they're looking at globular clusters. But during the course of this time this song has been, it's been anywhere from 16,000 estimate to 10,000 to 20,000. So again, it depends on at what time you're looking at things and what the latest information is. The next line is out by us, it's only 3,000 light years wide. Well, that's a pretty reasonable estimate, but when you look at the spiral arms, it makes sense that the outer arms may vary considerably in thickness. And I've read that they may vary from 1,000 to 10,000 light years thick. But still, that's pretty long, skinny, relatively speaking, proportions. By the way, I'm sure everybody recognizes the Andromeda Galaxy here, and it's 2 satellite galaxies, which is headed our way, by the way, but it'll be a long time. I probably won't be around to see that when we merge with that galaxy. Okay, and as I mentioned before, the authors did update the estimates periodically. They had different times that they released this. There was an initial release, and then several years later, there was another release for different. And one of the editors or the composers tried to update the information, but it kept changing. They'd get one way, and it's, oops, they changed it this way, so I changed it. Now they're telling me I was right the first time. And so they said something to the effect, I wished our esteemed scientists could come to a concise consensus, as you see at the bottom of the slide. We're 30,000 light years from galactic central point. And that's actually a pretty good estimate. The last one that I was able to find estimate was about 25,000 light years. So that's not bad. And this was something that I kind of didn't realize at the time, but it makes sense that each time you go around the sun's orbit around the Milky Way, you don't come back to where you were before. You end up a little closer and a little closer to that great big swirling black hole in the middle, I guess. But when you look at the spiral arms, that's what they look like too, is that they're coming in. They're closing in towards the center very, very gradually. So we go around every 200 million years. That was the next line in this. And actually, it's close to the actual figure of 220 to 250 million years, which might be the age of this fossil stromatolite, which is from my own personal collection. Unfortunately, it was given to me when I was a kid. And I don't know the context of this. I don't know if this is millions of years old or if it's billions of years old. It could be either. It's probably something in the millions, tens to hundreds of millions of years old, rather than on the order of a billion years. But nevertheless, the line is fairly close. But when you think about that, going around every 200 million years, a lot can happen during that time. 200 million years, that's about the time, the end of the, what they call the Triassic and going into the Jurassic period. In other words, the last time we were about this same point in our galaxy was the time of the dinosaurs. And a lot can happen during that time, as it shows on the on this point that I found in Green River, Wyoming. We've got a point that was formed, it's got microfossils in there that were alive quite some time ago. And then people came along, found uses for it, and interacted and used it to make their own tools. Now, this is probably, I can tell you, this is not 200 million years old. It was found in the Green River Formation area, and the rocks from around there are in the order of about 50 million years old. They're from the Eocene. So it's probably a remnant from the Eocene, but nevertheless, there's a lot can happen. 50 million years, that'd be a 1/4 of the way around the galaxy. So, since the appearance of complex life is, we've only gone around, our solar system has only gone around the galaxy maybe 2 times. Before that, all you had was single cell fossils like this stromatolite again. And when you think of it, from the time of the Cambrian explosion, we've gone around twice, and it's been about 10 times or 14 times we went around from the beginning, from the formation of the solar system. So 2 out of 14, that's not very much time that we had complex life on this Earth. When you think of the time that mammals and then human beings have been on Earth. We've been here for a very, very, very short time compared to the length of time in the universe, or in our solar system. The next one, our galaxy is one of millions of billions. And you'll recognize this is another one of the Hubble Deep Sky Survey images. Well, some estimates are that there might be 1 trillion galaxies. I don't think anybody really knows for sure because we can't observe the entire universe. And so we're just making a lot of guesses and assumptions. But that's what you do is you make your best guesses and then you make observations to the limit of your ability to see what's happening. But some estimates are over 1 trillion, but 1 trillion is 1,000 billion, not 1,000,000 billion. So again, they're off by quite a bit. However, if I'd have been writing this song, I would have, instead of saying 1,000 billion, I'd have said 1,000,000 billion. Number one, it sounds better lyrically, and it just flows off the tongue a whole lot better. So I give them some poetic license on that. I'm not too upset about that. In this amazing and expanding universe. Well, expansion was discovered by Edwin Hubble, of course, which we named the Space Telescope after, but it required measuring some astronomical distances. Like when you think about measuring things, go back 500 years. How did you make any measurements of anything? How did you measure time? How did you measure calendars? Very difficult. Even just a couple of century and a half ago, the railroad going across across the United States, different places had their own time. There would actually be big arguments about whose time was correct. So it's just been in the last several decades we've had the convenience of having an accurate calendar and clocks, and so we know precisely what time it is. Have you ever wondered why on earth would you put Christmas in December 25? I mean, according to history, Christ was probably born in April, somewhere in that time. However, if you go December 25, that's the first day after the winter solstice, so you can definitely tell the sun's coming back. Anybody can get that, and they don't have to have a calendar, they don't have to have a precise clock. Second example, Easter. Okay, why is it the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox? Again, that way everybody celebrates at the same time because you don't have to have these calendars. So it's amazing how we've come from that to this point where we can measure distances long ways away. We started off by Kepler figuring out the 3 laws of planetary motion, which gave the proportion of the semi-major axis and its relationship to the period of the orbit. And once they solved the distance to one of the other members of the solar system, they had the values of all of them could be easily calculated. And then they found other ways to verify this. But then how do you measure the distance to the stars? Well, if you hold your finger out in front of your face, close one eye and look at the other, you'll see it shift back and forth. You've got parallax. So you can measure a parallax, and that was done. But that's only good to maybe 50,000 light years, possibly 100,000 light years with the telescopes we have now. And then with the Hipparcos spacecraft, they actually did parallaxes measured in orbit around the Earth to the point they could go up to, I think it was 1,000 light years. I'm not sure. That's one of those numbers that fell out of my brain just about an hour ago because I was looking at it earlier, but I think it was up to 1,000. But again, that's very limited. So how do you see beyond that? Well, that's a good question. Okay, we got the Kepler's laws in the nearby stars. So you've got a few of the nearby stars, you know, but you got to figure out some way else to measure distances farther out from that. And the discovery came from Henrietta Swan Leavitt, who discovered what we call the yardstick of the universe using Cepheid variables. In fact, it was Henrietta Leavitt that came up with the term standard candle. Now, one of the prestigious online sources said that that was discovered by Edwin Hubble. It was discovered by Edwin Hubble's team, and she was part of that team. But she was the one that observed that the period of variability is related to its absolute brightness. So you can calculate the absolute brightness versus its apparent brightness, And it's a very simple calculation then to determine how far away that is. In the meantime, other standard candles have been discovered, including type 1 supernovae and RR Lyrae stars. But that opened it up. We could measure distances to the full Milky Way, as well as, oh my gosh, these clouds, these nebula we see, some of them are a long, long way beyond our galaxy. This was a major, major discovery. So I like to put it this way, and this is half of a poster that I made a few years ago for Women's History Month. Edwin discovered the expansion of the universe by using the yardstick of the universe was discovered by Henrietta Swan. So he discovered the expansion of the universe by standing on Henrietta's shoulders. So, and from what I've been able to read about her, she was a very interesting person and did a lot of research and work, but would never get a degree just because of the limitations they had at those times. But without her discoveries, we wouldn't have what we have now. I will say one other thing about the standard candles. It's something you have to continually look at and look from various, try and find other standard candles to compare with. So you have, did we get it right? When you look at the parallaxes, you're talking about a parsec is parallax of 1 second of an arc. So it's hard to get very many significant figures of how wide is that parallax. So that limits how close the distances are, but you can get a foundation that you can build on, and then we can get correction by getting other types of measurements as well. And of course, you know, the distant universe, we measure that by red shifts. So that can be measure distances beyond where you can actually resolve the individual stars in some of the more distant galaxies. One thing that was interesting was the Cepheid variables. They turned out not to be exactly the same in brightness, because when you look at the ones in the Milky Way, you're looking at what they call second generation stars, second type stars. In other words, they have a higher metallicity content, anything higher, anything heavier than hydrogen in it. Whereas the type 1 stars, they were the initial stars, and they were primarily hydrogen without helium, beryllium, and any of the other heavy elements. So they were actually a little bit brighter in the distant galaxies, which means those distant galaxies were actually farther than what we thought. But by comparing the different types of measurement, they were able to figure that out, which it's just amazing. Next one is the universe itself keeps on expanding and expanding in all the directions it can whiz. Well, there's little doubt to this. The redshift, the Hubble constant, they show that the universe is expanding. And I've been reading a very interesting book, A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawkins, and he goes into this in a great deal. And I can understand about half of it, but it's very well written. I'm probably going to turn right around and read it again after I get done with it, because it's got some implications and stuff that are really fascinating, especially dealing with the expansion of the universe and its ultimate fate. We mentioned about the big crunch. If we had a closed universe where eventually there was enough matter to halt expansion, have it crash back in on itself. The other option, which seems to be in favor now, is that it may go into unlimited expansion and accelerated expansion, which could, some people have called that the big rip, which would be quite a way to put that. But either way, it has some interesting implications for the destiny of the universe. Not that we're going to be around to see it, but nevertheless, it's amazing to think about the different possibilities on that. Now they talk about as fast as you can go at the speed of light, you know. The speed of light is the fastest speed through space, but space itself can actually expand faster than the speed of light, which, okay, I'm starting to get dizzy trying to think about all this sort of thing. So the first thing that comes to mind, well, if space is expanding, what does it expand into? Well, this brings up a Polynesian word that I read about a few years ago when I was studying about French Polynesia, tahoa. And that was usually in response to some missionary preaching about how things were and ought to be, which taken as close and literally as this thinking is hurting my head with the implication, knock it off already, would you? But nevertheless, I think it's fascinating to look at the diagram of how the universe is inflated and then inflated through in time. You had the very beginning, you had what they call the Dark Ages, and it had nothing to do with the Inquisition. It was before there was any matter and there was any light. And then the Earth, the universe cooled to a point where that could form. Then later on, we developed stars, galaxies, and to where we are today. And it just fascinates me. The one thing that they're talking about, that Stephen Hawking was talking about in the book, A Brief History of Time, is they think that he has had the impression that this was a closed, an unbounded universe, but that it was finite. Okay, how do you have something unbounded that's finite? Okay, you're standing on it, Earth. There is no boundary where you go around, move on Earth, where you're going to fall off the edge, but it is finite. And that is funny because I just read that today because it had me in a big tahoa trying to figure out some of that stuff. Okay, now that makes sense. I hope people aren't headed for the aspirin and the Tylenol right now. Next, it said 12 million miles a minute, and that's the fastest speed there is. The speed of light's 186,000 miles per second, 60 seconds. That's about 11,160,000. Almost 12 million miles a minute. And again, poetic license, 12 million miles a minute is a lot better than 11 million miles a minute in a song wise, because it just flows a whole lot better. And that's the speed of light through space, but it doesn't limit how fast space can expand. Now, the other thing is there are things that can travel faster than the speed of light through objects or through fluids, for instance, through water. And in some of the reactors, you get this eerie blue glow in the cooling water around there. That's from what they call Cherenkov radiation, where subatomic particles are actually moving slightly faster than the speed of which light can travel through that liquid, which again, that's giving me a headache trying to think about it, wrap my head around it. It's just really amazing. So just remember when you're feeling very small and insecure, how amazingly unlikely is your birth. But we're here, so get over it. One time, as I mentioned before, I was raised in a very fundamentalist church. I was talking with a good friend of mine, and he was a physician I worked with. And he was talking about, this enzymatic thing. We're talking about clotting of blood and how blah, blah. This is so precise. And so it couldn't possibly have just happened. I said, you're right. It couldn't possibly have just happened. And therefore, we do not exist. Well, that was kind of the end of our conversation we went on before. I mean, you can multiply out. Okay, look at 1,000 generations back. If so-and-so hadn't met so-and-so and got together, we wouldn't be here. Okay, that's one tahoa or headache I don't need to worry about. I'm here and I'm happy with that. So please leave 25 cents in the cup as you exit the building tonight for the psychological counseling. Okay, and pray that there's intelligent life somewhere up in space. Now, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence is, to me, is very intriguing. And one of the things that really got me going is they think, how long have we been here? We've been able to send radio messages for what, about 80 years? Maybe it's more than that, but I mean, as far as, so the closest any other people could pick up would be 80 light years from now. So there could be several different places out in space where there could be life, and we'll never pick it up because it's too far for their signals to reach. The other thing, and just it made me sad when I read it and thought about it, is let's just say human existence is capable of doing that and exists only for, say, for 100,000 years before whatever happens and it ceases to be able to send these messages. So you're looking at a band of signals that's only about 100,000 light years long. Okay, that's the width of the galaxy, but at the same time, that means there's going to be a beginning and an end. So if we do catch any signals from somebody else or other intelligent life of some sort, it's just a narrow window that we'll be able to catch. So there could be life out there. They could be sending signals and we may never pick them up too. So it'll be interesting to see what becomes of that. Of course, when I see this, I think of Jodie Foster in the movie Contact. I love that movie. Okay, because there's bugger all down here on Earth. Need I say any more? That's about intelligent life in space. Okay, so I'll finish up. Wizard, I have proof, and this came from a cartoon that I read. I have proof that there's intelligent life on Mars. Apprentice, then why haven't they contacted us? Wizard, you're not listening. Okay, any comments or questions at this point?
Yeah, I have a couple, Howard. Thank you very much. Very interesting structure of presentation. I loved it. A couple of comments I would make. First of all, with regard to Hubble standing on Henrietta Swan-Leavitt's shoulders, he also stood on Vesto Slipher's shoulders.
Yeah.
Few people really recognize the unassuming Vesto Slipher at Lowell Observatory, who discovered the recessional rates of about 11 spiral galaxies in 1919. He basically determined their redshifts. And it was the correlation of those redshifts with Hubble's use of Henrietta Swan-Leavitt's period luminosity relationship that allowed him to come to the conclusion that the universe was expanding. And he never credited Slipher for this. And Slipher never complained about not being credited. But Slipher did receive a standing ovation at an AAS meeting, the American Astronomical Society meeting in 1919, when he revealed the redshifts of those galaxies.
Wow.
So those were very significant shoulders that he stood on. Henrietta Swan-Leavitt, also an interesting sidelight, was considered by the Nobel Prize Committee for a Nobel Prize. They actually communicated to the Harvard College Observatory and to Harlow Shapley a letter asking for his basically support for, have I lost Zoom here?
No,
I can see
still
you.
with us.
And I can hear you.
Well, I've lost video for some reason, but you can still see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, good. Henrietta Swan-Leavitt was considered, but she had been dead for 4 years. She had died of cancer in her late 50s.
Yeah.
And so was not eligible for the Nobel Prize because of that. Also, you alluded to the errors in the Cepheid variable correlation between type 1, type 2, and so forth. And that was part of the reason that when Hubble first measured the distance to Andromeda, he came up with 750,000 light years, which was still extragalactic and still significant for that reason, but not quite as far as the 2.5 million we know it to be today. And so I just wanted to add those couple of points and thank you again for the presentation.
Oh, you're welcome. I really enjoyed doing it. I hope it wasn't too boring.
No.
It's funny and interesting.
Yeah, I had done that song for the ukulele club, online ukulele club that we did. And I thought, it's got so much in it. It'd be worthwhile to work something up. So that's why I did it.
That's awesome.
Nice touch.
That's awesome. Well, I didn't know you could play the ukulele, Howard, so I'm going to have you on Global Star Party just to play. That'll be awesome.
It's 2012 is when I really started taking it up.
Oh, okay.
You're
doing very well.
My proof that you can't teach an old doc new tricks.
You're doing very well. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Howard. That was amazing. I had never heard the song before. So that really brings a lot to light, makes you think.
You'll have to see it in the context of the movie.
I've never seen the movie. I'll have to look at it.
Yeah, I think it was the last part. He asked the lady if he can have her liver after that. So.
Oh,
gosh. Okay.
Moving right along, huh?
Yeah.
Moving right along. That's right.
Yeah. Thanks again, Howard. I am going to go ahead and announce the winners of the questions. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Okay, where was I at? Okay, so here are the answers. What type of total eclipse? It is total lunar in some parts of the world, but it won't be here. The winner is Josh. I have to move my pictures again. Kovac. It is a lunar. Let me go to the next one. Am I not sharing my screen?
Yeah, you are.
You're doing fine,
I
Terry.
am, but I'm not on the, okay. There we go. What color is the hottest star? Which is blue. Pika, help me out here, Scott.
Pekka.
Thank
Yes.
you. Yes, is a winner on that one. The meteor shower that peaks on May 5th is the Eta Aquarian meteor shower. And Michael Overacker has won that. So each of these people will win a tote bag. And Carroll Orch, our president here, will be in contact to get your address to mail that out.
Wonderful.
Yes, congratulations.
Yep.
So,
Wonderful.
as I have said, Alcon Virtual will be coming up in August, and we've all kind of talked about that. Chuck, you can listen here, and if you have anything to add, please add it to this. It will be broadcast by Scott Roberts, and again, we so appreciate your support, Scott. And it will,
thank you.
Sure. It will happen, as he said, August 19th through the 21st, 2 sessions a day. We are going to start the first one at 3 p.m. on Eastern Time, take a 2-hour dinner break, and come back at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll have speakers, door prizes, and there'll be more. We're still in the planning stages. Our website will be live sometime between the beginning and middle of May. And we will definitely announce that. Our next Astronomical League Live 6 will be on May 7th. We will definitely announce the website at that time. And that will be at 7 p.m. Eastern again, right here. So those are the winners, and thank you, and stay safe out there. And I would really like to thank Scott and to thank all the speakers we've had. I mean, it has been an amazing night. Conal did a great job. Howard, that was an amazing talk. A lot of information there. And I'll see if anybody else. I'd like to thank the speakers, all of the guests, Carroll, Chuck, everybody, David, and Scott. And I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in too. We really appreciate you being out there, and we have a lot of fun doing these, as you can tell. So if anybody else has anything they'd like to say, please join in and do that.
Thank you, Terry, for all the work you do with this. It's very much appreciated.
Well, thank you, Howard. I really do enjoy. It's just so nice to be able to get out there with everybody again and to have all these speakers. It's kind of like being at your local astronomy club, you know, on a Friday night, just hanging out, listening to speakers. And that was kind of the whole point for this. So again, I'd like to thank everybody. And does anybody else have anything they'd like to say?
Well, I think it was great to see everybody here, and you know, so there's always so much to learn from the Astronomical League. And you know, if you're watching out there, you're a league club or president or just a member, you know, make sure that you're watching and sharing and subscribing this program. It's a you know, it's an effort for the league organizers to put it together, and you know, they deserve your support. So
one thing I would encourage our leagues, clubs out there to do, you see what youth can do, they can really make a difference. And I'd like to encourage all of our clubs to tap those people in your own individual clubs, the families, and there are other people who are interested in astronomy if we just give them a chance. So keep that in mind as we go forward.
And thank you. And Scotty, you may want to mention about next Tuesday's GSP.
That's right. Yeah, we have the 44th Global Star Party coming up on next Tuesday. That will start at 8 p.m. Central, and we, as always, will have a great lineup. So, and the Astronomical League will be there. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, I believe Chuck Allen will be there for that.
Well,
Yep, Chuck will be there.
And Chuck usually gives a nice lecture along with that too. So people have been fascinated with his talks on distance and scale of the universe, and just some of the strange and weird facts about our cosmos.
And I believe, Scotty, we have found a third young person to join Deep T and Libby in the Stars.
Oh,
Bring our global.
maybe Connell Richards, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I very
We'd
much
love to have
appreciate.
you on. We'd love to have you on and be a regular on Global Star Party. So
I'd love to join in. I've watched a couple of them over the past couple of months while you've been doing them through the pandemic. It's a great show. It's a lot of fun.
great. Well, you'll be in good company. So, all right.
All right. Yeah, and Howard, you can come and play the ukulele.
We're gonna have you on at least once to play ukulele. That would be great. That would be awesome.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it, and we hope to see all of you on Tuesday for the Global Star Party and May 7th for the next Astronomical League live program. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Good night,
everyone.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.